Kindergarten Cop is a 1990 released action comedy directed by Ivan Reitman.
Arnie plays Detective John Kimball, who's your sort of typical loose cannon, tough guy, sunglasses indoors, movie cop kind of cliche. After spending years trying to apprehend drug dealer Cullen Crisp, he finally has him in custody. But in order to keep him there, he needs to track down Crisp's estranged wife. In order to do that, he goes undercover with his new partner. They track her down to a school, and he goes undercover as a kindergarten teacher. And he thought he had it bad with the criminals, but he has an even harder time with these small children and their horny mums.
Yeah, so welcome to September, new month, new theme. So this month's theme is inspirational teachers. And, obviously it's the month that people go back to school. Mm-hmm. But the main reason we're doing this is because my girlfriend has actually just started a new career training to become a teacher. So I thought, well, perfect, this is a great idea to do. It kind of fits in with the month of kids going back to school. So this is kind of in honour of her starting her new career as a training to become a teacher.
Good luck to her, because I sure as hell couldn't do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a tough job. I wonder if any of these films will show us that. I mean, obviously, Kindergarten Cop is a comedy with Arnold Schwarzenegger playing a cop, not actually a teacher. But we just thought, we'd watch a bunch of films that, where the teacher is... Because obviously there were many films set in schools. I mean, obviously, if you watch a lot of the old 80s Brat Pack films, we're a big fan of, Ferris Bueller, Breakfast Club, all the John Hughes films, and many other films from around that period are very school-based. Even the 90s, and you've got films like Dazed and Confused, lots of films. American Pie, and there's there were not so many British films that
Scum.
We grew up with.
Oh no, that's a Borstal.
Yeah, that's what we got. Yeah. The Americans got Breakfast Club, we got Scum. Yeah, exactly. But but the difference here is we wanted to focus more on the teacher themselves, and I mean, people. I had an inspirational teacher. I had a history teacher that I was kind of looked up to. So that's kind of the theme of this month. So obviously, Kindergarten Cop. He's not a teacher. He starts out as a cop, but he goes undercover because his partner, who's supposed to be the undercover one because she used to be a teacher, she kind of catches some kind of food poisoning and can't make it in on the first day. So she sends Arnie instead, and of course, hilarity ensues. But I mean, I hadn't seen this film for a long time. I watched Twins recently, randomly, which is also Ivan Reitman and Schwarzenegger, and I seem to remember that being quite cheesy, but I quite enjoyed it. Danny DeVito's very funny in it as well, and I was thinking that possibly is going to be the case here, but I thoroughly enjoyed this. I forgot how good it is. I mean, we've literally never done a Schwarzenegger film on the channel, and we've done two in the space of 2 weeks. And what I didn't actually say when we did Last Action Hero was that Schwarzenegger's good. He's so good at comedy.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
I mean, he's got... for comedy, you've got to have good timing, and his timing is impeccable. There's this great scene at the beginning when he's on the plane, and these kids are playing behind him, and one of the kids pushes into his seat, and just the look on his, he just gets it. I mean, obviously he's being directed by Ivan Reitman, who himself is also known as being a comic director. So you put the two together, and you get kind of good chemistry. But he's very good at humour. You don't realise it. I mean, you do. He's always kind of a bit tongue-in-cheeky.
Yeah.
And he's always, he's the man. He's like, James Bond passed the hat down to him for the kind of silly phrases, in action movies.
Well, you think True Lies, that was basically a Bond rip-off, and he nails the one-liners and everything in that, and the sort of winks, almost winking at the camera, and
yeah, exactly.
And there's a lot of humour in that as well.
But whereas Last Action Hero, he's kind of sending himself up. This obviously is a serious film, but he can do the comedy really well, and it's interesting because the film, although it's a Schwarzenegger film, it kind of does focus on the kids quite a lot, which is a nice way of. You're not, you're kind of expecting a Schwarzenegger action film, but you get something different.
Yeah.
Which I think works for him.
And he goes on a journey, and he's a very different person at the end of the film to how he is at the start. I mean, like I said, almost probably intentionally, he's a bit ridiculous with his long coat and his stubble and his insistence on wearing sunglasses all the time, whether it's day or night, indoors or outdoors.
Yeah.
And just kicking ass and taking names. And then as soon as he gets to this small town, that sort of facade begins to fall away. And you learn more about him as well. Obviously, he's got a son that he never sees, and again, another sort of movie cop cliche where he's he's got a wife and kid that he doesn't see anymore and stuff like that. That's used as a device to make the cop sort of a misery guts or whatever. But in this, it's delved into a little bit more, and why he maybe connects with the kids a bit more, because he misses that relationship with his own son.
It's a good cast. That always helps, you know, have a good cast. I mean, Linda Hunt plays the head mistress at the school he goes to, and she's always great to watch. She's quite a character. I mean, you know, lots of character actors here. Kathy Moriarty, she plays one of the horny mothers in the school, and she's cropped up quite a few times. Richard Tyson plays Cullen Crisp. What a strange name.
I know. That's strange hair. I mean, his hair is just... I can't stop looking at it.
No. Yeah. It's pretty strange, because he was in 3 O'Clock High, another school film we did many moons ago. Yeah. And Penelope Ann Miller plays one of the other teachers in the school as well. And Pamela Reed, of course, who was in...
Clan of the
Cave Bear as well, under a lot of makeup.
Yeah, I think she's quite an interesting character. You know, she's quite a strong female presence and isn't really intimidated by Arnie's gruffness or his, you know, she's considerably shorter than he is, doesn't take any of his crap and just tells him to get on with it, basically. And even on the way, you know, when they're driving to this town, that's when she starts to become ill. And sort of Arnie's facade begins to crack there, because he does sort of start to look after her, and because they have to stop every once in a while so she can throw up. So she's a fun character.
You know, it's an Ivan Reitman comedy from the early 90s. It's kind of got a lot of tropes from those, you know. I mean, even the music was. It made me think of Twins, and it turned out it's Randy Edelman who wrote the music for Twins. It's that very similar sound, and it's quite a light-hearted soundtrack when they first go to Astoria, which is where it's set. But like I said before, what I like about this film is that it's a Schwarzenegger film, and you know the whole thing is about Arnold Schwarzenegger's character's journey through this film. But it focuses a lot on the children, which I really liked about it. It wasn't like a Schwarzenegger film as so much as obviously the kid who thinks everyone's going to die very quickly in life, and they've all got their own kind of issues. Which it shows and it plays upon, which I think is really nice. And then there's a kid who's maybe being hit by his father or by his parents, so that's brought into it. Obviously, Schwarzenegger does it and kind of solves it in a somewhat comical way. I mean, even the whole thing about him going undercover, I was like watching it. I was like, as an adult, you're like, this is slightly nefarious, isn't it? Because of course there are cases where policemen go undercover and earn the trust of women and. It was a famous case over here, I think. So, if you watch it as an adult, it kind of becomes slightly... But, it's a comedy at its heart, and it's well put together. And I think the chemistry between all the characters is really enjoyable. There's a really great kind of bit at the beginning, actually, when Richard Tyson's character he's being kind of arraigned, isn't he? And he's had his court case, and then Schwarzenegger says, "I want a quick word with you." And he pushes him through this door, and I'm like, Christ, the force he pushes that through that guy. I mean, Schwarzenegger's a big bloke. Yeah,
why this Cullen Crisp guy is as nuts as he is, I don't know, but his mother seems to have something to do with it. He's obsessed with obviously finding his ex-wife and his son. His mother, played by Carol Baker, they've got a strange relationship. Almost to the brink of incestuous.
Yeah,
it's a bit of a strange one. Whether she cuts his hair and that's why it looks so weird.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
I think if there's any negativity about the film, it's possibly that. I mean, he is kind of made out to be this kind of drug baron type, criminal, but then he's got his mum hanging off his side all the time, which it's a bit psycho-esque.
Yeah,
it doesn't really fit. I mean, it's. Again, like I said, it does suffer with a lot of those comedies, action comedies of the late 80s, 90s. They sometimes suffer from either silly plot points or silly characters. A lot of films do. We had the same problem over here. That happened the other day. We were talking about Hudson Hawk, and I kind of compared it a little bit to films like Nuns on the Run and The Paper's Day. A lot of these British films that came out of similar period, late 80s, early 90s, they'd have either silly plots or silly characters that don't quite fit, and kind of makes it just feel a bit, nowadays when you watch it through kind of modern day's eyes, because you tend not to get comedies like that anymore.
No.
They have a bit more serious writing going on, I think, whereas in those days it feels a little bit lazy at times. And the whole situation with the son, and I mean, yes, obviously so his thing is he's going back to look for his son because his son and his son and the son's mother ran away supposedly with $3 million from a drug bust or a drug deal gone wrong. And so he's now going to hunt down his son. So in that way, you can kind of, I suppose, you can see why his mother's brought into it, because she's obviously the grandmother as well. But she's dressed very smartly, but she's like this big kind of underworld. It's all a bit odd. That
I mean, there's a scene where they go to a pharmacy, and she's anticipating getting the son, the child back, and she's buying loads of like cold remedies and stuff like that, and he's like, what do you do? Why are you buying all this stuff?
Yeah,
and there's sort of hints that maybe she sort of over medicated him or something as a child. So I mean, maybe that needed to be explored a little bit more in the script, because it's all very vaguely sketched from a sort of villain standpoint. He needs a bit more backstory, I think, a bit more he wants his son back. That's fine, but why he's the way he is. There's hints at that, but it's not really.
It's not explored too much more than that.
No, it could have done with a bit more.
Yeah, and because they're not. I mean, they're not in it a great deal. I mean, obviously, it's Schwarzenegger's story going to find the child, but that kind of obviously that comes back into it as you go through the story, and it's just it's a little bit annoying. I found at times she's a bit kind of, I mean, it all resolves itself in a decent enough way, but it's one of those films that I think it has, those are the flaws of it, and I think a lot of those films from that era had those flaws, but it doesn't ruin your experience. If you're a fan of Schwarzenegger, you will just go with it because it's just a joy to watch Schwarzenegger. And his stuff with the kids is so,
that's what you're there for.
That's what you're there for.
Those scenes.
And he does turn out to be a kind of inspiration and obviously that's the theme of this month is inspirational teachers. And he does end up becoming a kind of inspiration to a lot of these children and their lives, and kind of changes them for the better, I think, and him too.
Yeah, they change him as well. So. He does actually reference being Austrian in this, which I'd forgotten that he did that, and also that I don't know whether that's ever referenced in any other film that he's in.
No, I don't know.
It's always he's always got a sort of generic. Sort of English sounding name. I mean, even John Kimball doesn't sound particularly Austrian,
not really,
does it? But he does say, "Oh yes, I'm from Austria." Yeah. And of course, there's a scene where Pamela Reed then pretends to be his sister and affects an Austrian accent as well. So it's a lot of fun, and of course it's full of one-liners as well, which Arnie's always famous for, like "It's not a tumour" and things like that.
I think the addition of Ivan Reitman is good here. I mean, obviously Schwarzenegger did 3 films with Ivan Reitman. Yeah, he did Twins and he did Junior, which was a bit sketchy. Bit of an odd one, that. Yeah.
Well, obviously, Ivan Reitman can obviously bring out his best comedy side.
Yeah, and but we have it on DVD or Blu-ray.
Yeah, I picked up the Blu-ray. I mean, it was on Film 4 actually last week.
Oh, okay.
It's on TV quite often, but I never had it on DVD, and I think that's because it was always full frame, which is a bit unforgivable. But the Blu-ray's okay. There's only a trailer on it, which is a bit pathetic. But it's not the most vibrant picture I've ever seen on a Blu-ray, but it was perfectly fine. So I think they always put it on during the day when they put it on, when they show it on TV, and it is a 15 because there's not a huge amount of swearing, but towards the end it gets a little bit and the beginning it gets a bit violent. So I think they do make some cuts.
No, I mean I think it's a great film. The question I do have though is what is with the ferret?
I know, that's strange, isn't it? It's just suddenly this ferret is in his car.
Pops out of his bag. It's like, well, how did he get that on the plane?
Well, that was my question. It's like, surely he didn't because he didn't have it on the plane. Well, we never see it on the plane. It's like, but it's Pamela Reed's character hadn't seen it until they're in the car. Yeah, so it's like he must have had it in a carrier and checked it in like luggage or whatever. Yeah, or he would have had it on a seat, so it's like it suddenly materialises after they're on the plane. I mean,
it's one of those things. It makes obviously for a great mascot for the kids. Yeah, perfect. But it's like, you got that. How does that even work? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I know obviously that they're flying interstate, so it's probably okay taking animals across lines.
I guess
dogs and cats, maybe ferrets. I don't know.
Maybe it's his emotional support animal.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe. I mean, he's a cop. He can obviously get his gun on the plane.
But that's fine. But she didn't know anything about it, and how's he going to conceal it for the whole flight?
Yeah.
characters.
Yeah, it was,
doesn't make sense.
It was a bit
But
again another one of those kind of
It's just
silly American, well, not just American, but silly comedy tropes that
Yeah.
kind of comes out in a lot of these kind of films. But
it's a little bit of a plot hole, but it doesn't really matter.
a little bit, but it does survive the whole film. It is there. It makes its way in
does.
many story moments during the film. You gotta love the ferret.
Yep.
So that was Kindergarten Cop, and as always, if you enjoy the video, let us know in the comments below.
Hit the subscribe button up there and don't forget to push the bell for notifications. There's other videos to check out over there. Come and find us on social media and join us again next week for another video.